Behavioral interview questions are some of the more challenging questions you'll get asked during a job interview. And this is no different with Ulta. And behavioral interview questions are incredibly popular. In today's video, I'm going to give you some actual behavioral interview questions they're going to ask you during your Ulta Beauty job interview. And I'm going to teach you, from a recruiter's perspective, exactly how to answer them and give you a framework to answer every behavioral interview question you'll get for the rest of your life. Now, this is video 2 in a 5-part series. So if this is the first video you're seeing, make sure you go back and watch the first one. And at the very end of this video, I will actually tee up the next video on screen right over here so you can seamlessly go from this video to the next one. All right, let's get started. Now, first things first, what is a behavioral interview? A behavioral interview question is basically any question that asks you to recall a previous example of something that happened in your career and walk them through how you handle the situation. Now, they typically start with a phrase like, give me an example of a time when, or tell me about a time when, or can you share an example of a time when, right? Basically, anything that is prompting you to recall a previous experience. Now, whenever you get one of these questions, the framework you want to use to answer it is the STAR method. Now, the STAR method means situation, task, action, and result. So first and foremost, what was the situation? So where were you working? What was your title? That general high-level information. Task. What was the specific task you had to handle, right? Like, what was it that you needed to do? Action. So what was your specific action? So you're presented with a scenario. How did you act? What did you do? What were your actions? And then finally, result. What was the outcome of everything you've explained up to this point? And then when it makes sense, I like to throw an L on the end for lesson. Was there something that you learned in this situation that is applicable to future situations? All right, now let's get into some of the examples of the questions they're going to ask you during your Ulta Beauty interview. Now, the first question is, tell me about a time you went above and beyond for a customer. This is a classic customer-facing role. So if you're going to be, interfacing with customers at Ulta, this is something they're going to expect you to know. Now, there's a few things that are really important in answering this question. One, make sure you use the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. Second, it's really important that in this example you give them, you actually go above and beyond, right? So it can't just be, I did my job, the customer was satisfied. That's not enough. It needs to show you an example of you doing something that would be outside of the scope of your role. So maybe this looks like staying past when your shift ends to help the customer because their situation wasn't resolved yet. Or maybe it's an example of a time where there wasn't a product at a store you worked at, so you ended up calling like 6 or 7 other stores to locate it, have them hold it for the customer, and then the customer was thrilled with the outcome. And then lastly, that. The customer has to be thrilled with the outcome. For this story to truly be a great story, you need to do all those things. But at the very end of it, the customer has to leave satisfied. You're going above and beyond, ideally ends with the customer appreciating it and be thrilled with the service they received. Now, I can't give you an exact example because your example has to come from your background. But think about something that falls within those parameters and use that as the answer to this interview question. If you can do that, you'll do great. Now, this next question is, tell me about a time you dealt with an upset customer. This is, again, a classic behavioral interview question for anybody who is in a customer-facing role. Now, again, use a STAR method: situation, task, action, result. We know that. This will be the last time I hammer it in. But make sure you do that. That framework is really important to telling a concise, effective story here that is a good answer. But when you're talking about upset customer, there's a few things that you really need to do. In your story, you have to have kept your cool, right? You can't also get upset. In your story, you need to listen to the customer, empathize with the customer, ask them questions to fully understand what's going on, and then resolve their issue. So your story should seamlessly walk them through an example like that. So I'm going to make up a fictitious example so you can see how this looks practically. Okay, Ben, can you give me an example of a time where you dealt with an upset customer? Well, that's a great question. You know, in my previous role, I was a salesperson at Sears and I sold large appliances. There were several instances in which I had upset customers come through. And one of the stories that sticks in my mind is I had sold a couple a washer and dryer on Black Friday, and they had gotten a really good deal and they were really excited about it. But they came in like 2 days later and they were upset because the delivery people had called them and said that their units were no longer available, that we had oversold the unit on the Black Friday sale. So they came in and they were incredibly upset. They were so excited about it. They really needed it for a new house that they purchased. So I talked to them. I apologized for this. I told them that I was really sorry this happened. I asked them questions so I could get more information. And then I worked with them to try to find another unit they liked. Okay, so if this one's not available, what about a different unit? And we went and we found a unit that was comparable to what they had purchased, and they would be happy if that was a replacement. So I went and I talked to my manager and I shared the story, and we were able to override it and give them the same price for the other one. And then we were also able to give them free delivery. And they ended up leaving pretty happy. I mean, they were still a little frustrated with what happened, but at the end of it, they were happy knowing that we did what we could to fix their situation. They were able to get the new units, were a little bit nicer for the same price, and they were able to get free delivery. So they ended up actually leaving pretty satisfied. And 6 months down the road, they actually came back in and I sold them a stove. And we had a really good kind of laugh about the initial incident. But they had returned and they were very happy. There you go. So that's a long example of that. But what I did there was I walked you through the situation. Salesperson at Sears. My task, I was a salesperson, right? So I was selling. But the task was customer came in, they were unhappy, resolving their issue. Action. The specific thing I did is I asked about their situation, found them a unit, talked to my manager, price match, sold it to them. Result, they were thrilled, came back 6 months later and they bought another unit. And that's how you basically walk through a behavioral interview question. Now, one of the additional questions you're going to get asked in your Ulta Beauty interview is, why do you want to work here? And it's one of the most important questions you'll get asked. In fact, it is so important, I made its own video. And that's this video here. So I am done here, but you should absolutely go watch this, because answering this question well might be the difference between you getting the job and not getting the job. So I'm done here, but I'll see you over there.